At what stage would you like me to share my slides?
After I give the welcome and stuff.
Okay,
So
and you just prompt me.
yeah,
Good.
cool.
Sounds good.
We'll just give it another couple minutes before
No
we
problem.
start. So you can't see people on this one, which I didn't realize.
It's hard, isn't it?
Mm,
'Cause you can't gauge audience participation.
exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we might make a start. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to be able to put this masterclass on and have one of our really engaged and proud alumni, Diana Dragmirovic. I'm so sorry I got that wrong and I just practiced it. But she's a proud MQ alumni. She did MBA in 2007 or 17. Did I get that right?
Yep, 2000 and I graduated, yeah, 2017, yes.
Beautiful. And she has a wealth of experience for us today. And she has two roles. So she's the CEO and founder of the Lead Icon and AMN, and so works across both business and health. And I'm not the best person to talk to or talk about her experience. So I'll hand over to Gianna to take us through today. Just a couple of housekeeping things first. Any questions you have throughout the session, please just put us through on the Q&A, and I'll add the workbook for in the chat as well. So you have that if you don't have that already. Over to you, Gianna.
Thank you, Jim. I'll start with the presentation now straight away, and then we'll get going. It is quite hard presenting to, I can't see your faces, so I'm really grateful that you're here. So I look forward to more engagement at the end of this presentation. So the way we'll run this is that I'll go through what I've prepared for you, and then at the we'll have about 20 minutes to have a deep dive into your questions and what you'd like to discuss, and possibly solve in any sort of find solutions. So to get started, this is a really important topic and something that most people struggle with. And recently, I was in a board meeting, and this board meeting happens every month. And I work with a group of board members on this particular project. And we were speaking about not only the future of the business, but also a particular project. Now, I had been working on this project for more than 4 years, and it had been failing. It had gone through 3 iterations, and we had finally found the right solution, and it was taken over the line. Now, I didn't, even though it failed, I never blew out of cost, and I also found that the engagement from my top peers was very low. So when we were in this board meeting, I was listening to a lot of feedback that was counterproductive for us to move forward. And so when it came to my turn to talk, I found myself like my blood pressure had reached to this level. And I actually, in the moment that we were talking, I decided that I actually wanted to quit because I felt undervalued, and I felt that I wasn't being, I guess, heard and supported. So something happened that never happened to me in my life, is that I started to cry. I was that frustrated. I started to cry, and it's quite embarrassing to cry in front of your chair. So thankfully, they were very supportive because, my position is quite, like, I hold quite a strong position in this organization. They heard me. And what happened afterwards is we had this reshuffle. So a few board members left and a few well, the ones that stayed became more engaged. And now we've got more board members coming on that are more engaged with our vision. So what I realized was that I'm like a Ferrari, but I was being valued like a used car. So I'd like you to think about, have you ever felt capable of far more, but the environment's kept you stuck? So just think for a moment, this is not uncommon. It's not an uncommon problem. Now, as Jim, nicely and you said my name perfectly, Jim, so do not berate yourself. And I was telling Jim that I actually, although my name is Diana, I called myself Diana up until I was about 15 years old because I was, it was such a hard name. And then, I finally liked my unique name. So I continued with that. Now, I finished my MBA at Macquarie and I did it full time. I did it over 2 years. And I chose to do that at the same time I was exiting a healthcare business that I owned. And I had that business for about 11 years. And the experience I had at Macquarie was phenomenal. I loved every aspect of it. I loved my cohorts, my professors, the learning, the projects. And like my regret is that I didn't actually keep going with the doctorate because it would have been finished by now. But and you sort of talk yourself out of these things, and I wish I had followed my intuition. So the MBA, I chose the MBA because I had been building successful small businesses. Prior to my health business, I had a marketing agency, and prior to that, I worked in corporate. But when I exited my health business, I really wanted to start a business that would scale. And now I run two different types of businesses. One's a healthcare business and one's a growth consulting business. But the growth consulting business is designed to morph into something more. So as you probably know, Nokia started off as a paper mill business. And now it's not that they're a great example, but they are still around. And then you've got Toyota that also started off doing something very different to what it is today. So my goal at the moment is to grow my business so that it's a global enterprise. So today I really want us to focus on you, and in particularly focusing on what you want in terms of your career. So that's the first part. And then the second part is the area of mentorship. Both closely aligned, but first we want to start with you. Now, when you look at the stats that are out there, they don't paint a very good picture when it comes to engagement. And my story that I shared with you at the beginning is not an uncommon one. I deal with so many different boards, leaders, and also teams. And what I have come to discover is that this is a problem that we all face. And not that anyone wants this problem, but because we're so busy, we don't stop to try and solve this problem. And some of these businesses have, the amazing amount of resources, great teams, but they're still stalling. And so why is that? So if we look at some stats, we've got 15% of employees globally do not feel, sorry, they are engaged. So that means 75%, 85% are not engaged. That's a lot of people. And you can all probably see this in your own environments. You've got people who are self-starters and they can engage themselves and they push themselves through. But that's a very finite area where you've got the competition at the top. Then you've got 70% actively looking for a new job. And in Australia, 54 billion per year is lost in productivity. And that's due to absenteeism and turnover. And now, you'll hear that, the word, oh, people are lazy or people are this. This is actually not the problem. People are burning out because they're doing too little of what matters, not too much. So I know a lot of leaders get stuck in admin. I know a lot of um, team members that work for leaders get stuck with the goalposts getting moved all the time. So these are problems that people face every day. So there's also something that I want us to address is the skills gap. Now, we're hearing constantly about AI replacing jobs. Now, in this space today, I want to challenge you not to focus so much on the fear that's being pushed on us, but to focus on how you're going to adapt, because the skills, the courses, the mentoring, they're all there. They're all there. The first step is for you to figure out what you want. That's the first step, and we'll get to that in a moment. But what's most important is that you adapt to this change. And you have to remember that this is not the first time civilization's going through change. It happened in ancient Greece, it happened during the agricultural changes, the Industrial Revolution. It's happened at pivotal times in the different eras. And so we're going through that too, and we will get through this. But we have to go through it with a lens where we're curious but not fearful. And think, like, if you play chess, think about what the steps ahead, because there are very smart people out there telling us. So we just need to equip ourselves. So this is the last aspect of this. Underperformance is not, again, attributed mostly to laziness. It's because we're not heard, we're not seen, and we don't feel important. So clarity is very important from the perspective of from the individual, and it basically starts with you. Now, the team, Jim, I know Jim and your team sent out the pre-work, which we had a bit of it was a sheet. And I think, Jim, you were going to post it into the chat or somewhere so that if you didn't get it or you didn't open it, you can utilize it during the course of this presentation, and then you can use it also, post. Now, like I said, it starts with you and it's setting up the frame. Now, this doesn't involve your role or your resume. We need to peel back the onion that is you, okay? So what we want to say is that I want you to think about what is it that you want. And this is something that I deal with constantly is I'll ask the people I work with, what do you want? And I always get what they don't want. So what do people don't? They all say to me, I don't want to work with, underperforming employees, or I don't want to work with a narcissistic boss, or I don't want this or I don't want that. They don't tell me what they want. And when they do tell me what they want, it's vague. It's like, oh, I want more balance, or I want more time. So we've got to get very clear about, what we actually want. And something that I think is really important to be mindful of here is that a lot of what we want isn't always attached to what we achieve. Achievement is a good metric of, it gives us a milestone that, we got a promotion, we got a pay rise, we bought a house. There are things that we need to look forward to that reward us for our efforts. But achievement is often a problem because we're always looking for the next fix in achievement. And there's a guy called Ken Honda, who's basically a financial coach. And he said he did research with over 1,000, I think they're about billionaires and millionaires. And what he found was when they got to, they bought their first jet. So, it might have been a 12-seater plane. Then once they had that plane for a little bit, then they wanted a, 20-seater plane. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting more, but I'm saying is that if there's no fulfillment in that, then all you are doing is chasing an end game that you'll never find fulfillment in. So once you've stripped away your title, your LinkedIn profile, and your pay packet, how would you define a fulfilled career and life? Because the two go together. The two go very much together. So I'd like you to think about that for a moment. How do you define it? Now, when we look at some statistics, and I wanted to share this with you, is that one of what the research says is that if you think about how you wake up most mornings, so most mornings, if you wake up stressed, or you wake up anxious, or you wake up dread, or you may wake up happy, or you may wake up excited. So test every morning what your emotion is, and also write down what that might be over a series of days, because that will give you an idea of where your baseline is. Because we're always hoping for change, and if we don't make these changes, like incremental changes on a daily basis, what we want in 5 years will feel harder, and we won't enjoy it as much, because it's just how we're wired. So I ask you to really pay attention to, when you wake up, what it is that's going on in that with you. Are you jumping out of bed, or are you dreading getting out of bed? So there's a guy called Dan Gilbert, and he came up with a theory that basically says that we're very bad at effective forecasting. So what does that mean? That we cannot predict what makes us happy. We sort of think what does, but in the long run, we cannot predict it. So what he's saying is that we need to find meaning in our life. It can't be just about goals and achievement, because otherwise, if they're not aligned, we're going to go through our day to day feeling that we're just not making it, we're just not cutting it. So, and how do we do that? We've got to overcome ourselves every day. We've got to pick those little habits that are causing us a lot of, I guess, stagnation. And if we just twisted it a little bit, or just made a little amendment, like such as you might need to get up earlier, or you may need to put your devices away an hour before, go to bed a bit earlier, or whatever it is that you need to do, start with one thing, because that little degree can take you down a path that, will make you much more happier. You actually control that. No one else controls that. So this is where we also talk about the area of, why don't we stop to ask? Why aren't we stopping to ask these questions of ourselves? And these are the reasons. We're rewarded for speed, not reflection. And I was having a conversation yesterday with, I was very impressed with this young man. He was talking about, or young person, he was talking about how when he has a problem, he goes to his boss straight up, and he gets access to the CEO, and he talks to him and says, this is not working. Whereas the advice he gets from people is like, oh, don't go and rock the boat. But he does it in a way where he actually gets engagement with his leader, so that he can affect change. But we're afraid of doing that because we think speed is what everybody wants. And I heard this the other day, which you'll find very, very funny but sad, is that the top will say, when I say the top, I'm saying, the leadership will say, my team never come to me and say to me, what's the problem? They don't want to tell me. And then the team, when you ask them, well, why don't you go to the leadership and tell them what's the problem? They'll say, because they don't listen. So there's no point in telling them, which is, to me, insane, because we all want the same thing. Now, there's a thing called certainty effect. This is another problem. As humans, we're designed to feel certain. So anything that's risky, we avoid like the plague. So there's two things that we're always doing. We're always running from pain and running towards pleasure, which can be quite a very, I guess, it can cause us a lot of bad decisions in our lives. But certainty effect is something that really affects our decision making, and stops us from having a much more fulfilled life. You know yourself, when you've been reticent to try something, and then you do it, you go, that wasn't that hard. Why did it take me so long to do that? When you realize I can do this. And the other thing I find really difficult is executives get stuck in draining roles because of titles and status, rather than finding something that fulfills them. The other day I was speaking to a gentleman who was an investment banker, and he gave that all up to become a beekeeper, of all things. So he then went and bought himself a plot of land on King Island, and now he creates this amazing manuka honey. He's distributing it, and he's very happy. He's helping people. So what I'm saying is that, where are you staying in your comfort zone, even though it's draining you? Because change is not easy. We hate it. But we in order for you to, I guess, get to where you want to go, you've got to challenge these things. And we live in a country where we can do that. We have so many opportunities, despite what's being barked at us, we have many opportunities. Now, there are four subtle forces shaping your professional progress and fulfillment. So we've got money, we've got society, we've got culture, and we've got family. And all of these things are important to us. They're all important to us because they, I guess they, they not only shape us, but they also teach us, but they show us beliefs. They teach us, how to fear things also sometimes. So these are the things that we need to look into. So I want to start with money. Money is a very important thing. And I remember when I started out in business, I had a particular mentor, and he used to always say to me, Diana, what is your number? What number do you want? So he was asking me, what is that end goal for me? Where do I want to end up? And so the challenge here is, especially if you are trying to, if a number is driving you, is that you end up sticking to things or to roles or salary based on that security. And I'm not saying that we don't need security. It's a basic need. We absolutely need it. But say you work for somebody, it's called golden handcuffs. So you're basically a slave to the salary because you can't leave, but you're miserable, you know. So what I'd like you to do is to define your financial baseline. And what that means is you need to look at what you need in a year. And this is not I guess there are three sorts of areas that you can look at. Best case scenario, would like to have scenario, and worst case scenario. Now, worst case scenario doesn't mean poverty. It means like what you could live with. But if you take your best case scenario, that could be something like, oh, I need $500,000 a year to live comfortably and enjoy the life I want. You need to figure that out, because then that will help you drive what type of work you do and what would fulfill you. Because once you start on that journey, you might realize, actually, I don't need $500,000. I can actually live on $200,000. Or you might be somebody that says, I want to be making it at that $1 billion. Like, it just depends on where your desires and wants and goals lie. So evaluate what your financial and emotional return on investment are, because when you are trying to kick the bigger goals, it's not easy. You have to be willing to sacrifice. So be mindful of that too. Now, I'd like you to think now, what's driving your money choices over meaning or growth? You may have challenges with money. You may have, where you're not sure how to utilize your money to make it grow. So this is where I'd like you to start thinking, well, how can I change that? Next is culture. Now, culture is a really important aspect because when I speak about culture, I'm talking about the workplace, not so much about our nation's culture, but the workplace. So, because that also either, I guess, curtails us or helps us grow. And one of the things that I find quite extraordinary with culture is that we fall into these default modes where, we just end up doing what's expected of us. We don't learn ways how to negotiate. We think that we can't say anything. And sometimes we can't, because we're dealing with certain individuals who might be above us, below us, that stifle our progress. So here is where you need to take a good hard look at and ask yourself, whatever is thrown at you, you ask yourself, is this an expectation or is this an opportunity? Because are you there to just turn up and work day to day, or are you there to actually create some impact for yourself and for others? Because where are you going with this? So, say for example, you're in a department or an environment where there's not much wriggle room, for you to do things. You do have opportunity, and again, it depends on the size of your business, to step out and do some stretch projects or side initiatives. And that could be even something that you proactively create, you know. Now, if you have a boss that is a no person, my advice to you is to try and create something that shows initiative and then sell it. Because if you do that before, you won't get the buy-in from the person. So that's something that's quite, I see quite often also. And the other thing that you can do is find some external mentors or sponsors to help you through those difficult moments, because sometimes you have the best intention and you just can't wriggle out of your role, or you can't even do your role to the best of your ability because you are constrained. None of your ideas are ever appreciated or accepted. But I guess here it's a learning how to use your power. So this is that last bit. 4, how do you build influence? Now, I'd like you to go out, if you haven't already, and purchase this book called, and I'll go on to the next slide because I go into it a bit more here. It's called The Psychology of Persuasion. And I recommend you read this book, and you not read it once, you read it many times. This book is the playbook that they use at a global level too. They use it for all sorts of things. They use it on us for advertising. They use us to, like even governments use it on us. Corporations use it on us. The psychology of persuasion is an really important tool for you to learn, so that you know what type of people you're dealing with when you are trying to progress in your own life. And this isn't about manipulation, it's about influence and how to get the best outcome for you and others. Because that's not manipulation, that's actually collaboration. But sometimes you have to deal with you're always dealing with people's fears. So the first step is authority. You have to build up your authority. And if you're, say, starting out in your career, the way that you build your authority is by aligning yourself with people in your organization who you see as where you want to be. Then say, let's go up a notch. Say you're now in middle management, you do the same. You've got to align yourself with people who are actually, I guess, show that, have that expertise that you'd like. But then you need to find your sweet spot. So then reciprocity. This is really important. Now, one of the things, like for example, on LinkedIn, like I always see these when people reach out to me, they're always selling to me straight away rather than building a relationship with me. So the first step is never to go to somebody and try and sell them something. You go to them and you give them something. So say, for example, a boss or somebody who enjoys, I don't know, cars, or they are particularly interested in data around, I don't know, strategy, and how businesses fail. That's just an example. You would go and find a report or some sort of book or whatever, and you'd share it with them. So find little things that don't cost you anything so that you can say, hey, I thought of you and this may help you. A colleague, if you see a colleague needs help or something that you feel that you can actually, work with each other, start that relationship with them. Because when you share, you actually gain. And the social proof. Now, not everybody likes to be on social media, and this is not about that. This is about you when you have a win, you share it. Like you share it with your colleagues. If you do like social media, you can do it there too. Scarcity is also important, where you highlight a unique contribution that no one else has. I always say, when we're fishing, if you fish in a pond where there's lots of fishermen and few fish, you're not going to catch fish. So find a pond where there's lots of fish, but not many fishermen. that's the sort of thinking I would have when it comes to building up your authority. And obviously connect. I find that like you look on the train or when you're on public transport, everybody's so fixated on their devices. Nobody connects. But when you go and you deal with, and with your colleagues, like, when you turn up to work, say hello, ask people how they are. This is really important to bring that back, especially as we're being pushed more and more into this AI age. It's all about just, being isolated. That's not who we are as humans. So, and the other thing is find somebody junior to mentor. If you see somebody coming through the ranks that you'd like to help, and it doesn't have to be a lot of your time. You can create a structured program, help them, just help them, ask questions, teach them how to write an email, little basic things. This is just an example depending on where you're at. If you're a senior, you could do the same with people who are trying to, build their way up. And I know that people are afraid of competition. So that's where I'd like you to read this Psychology of Persuasion, because you've got to protect yourself too from competition, because sometimes someone would want to take what you're doing. So just be mindful of the different games that learn chess, as they say. Uh, Sorry, my screen is now. Um, Here we go. Now, the next one is family and friends. Family and friends can be a great support, and they can also, unintentionally hold us back. So here, this is a very touchy area because, family and friends are very important to us. So here we need to find the courage to be able to, speak lovingly and kindly to what we want, and to find ways that it doesn't maybe affect people. So for example, I remember when I was doing my MBA, and we'd have, my colleagues would say, I'm doing my MBA, but at a cost. Like we're now not going to go on holidays for 5 years. So these are the things that you can negotiate, but but in 5 years that person will have recouped, and then they can go on amazing holidays. So you've just got to figure out what it is that you want, and then become a really good negotiator so that you can negotiate so that everybody wins. So ask yourself what expectations are truly yours versus what's inherited, and whose fears are you trying to, I guess, protect? Because if you're protecting fears, that means that you're not growing. Anyway, okay, so society, this one's really important. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, so I ask you to create your inputs, like what you listen to, what you watch, really curate that. And think about what what the shoulds are in society and why they're guiding you. Now, I think that's very important. Now, the four keys of intelligence. This is really important. This is an important framework to learn. We know about the emotional and the intellectual, but I want to share with you the adversity and the social. So, like I said to you before, we run from pain and run to pleasure. Adversity is something that's always going to be with us. We saw that during 3 years of COVID. We had, there was a GFC in 2008 that, annihilated a lot of people's finances. And there's always going to be some sort of adversity, whether it's health, whether it's dealing with somebody at work. So we've got to reshape our mindset around adversity so that we're not coming at from a point of view of always being in combat and condemning. Because when we're in combat and condemning, we lose our power. So what we need to do is seek challenges and reflect on those lessons. So this is something that I've learned because, I deal a lot with people, and I deal with, high level leaders who can be really demanding and difficult. So I can't allow myself to get sort of whipped up into a frenzy when I see, things might be unjust or that I've always got to find a way around them. So I ask you to learn about this model because it's very helpful. You know, your emotional intelligence is extremely important, especially around how you react. You know, you're either somebody who won't react or you overly react or you're in between. So, you know, think about how that is affecting your relationships, how that affects you. So think about what intelligence you would like to focus on this week and go out and learn this model. Now, so sorry. Now, better questions. This is really important, this area, because the quality of your life is determined by the questions you ask of yourself. So it's about impact. It helps you with who you're becoming. It also shows you what costs they have to your life, what trade-offs you're making, and then how aligned you are to your vision, your values, and where you're going. So every week, schedule a reflection to revisit your questions. And right now, as I go through the next slide, I want you to come up with 1 or 2 questions that you're going to think about this week. So you're going to write down what, again, you're going to take 2 to 3 minutes and you're going to think about what are the better questions that you can ask yourself. So for example, instead of saying, how do I get promoted? Ask yourself, what kind of impact do I actually want to have in the next 5 years? And is that impact actually something that's only is going to help me grow, or is it going to set me back? Because you may want to be a CEO or you may want to be a beekeeper, you know, but is that actually something that aligns with what you want? Think about that. So I want you to take we don't have 2 to 3 minutes, but this is something that you can do every week, 2 to 3 minutes. Think about a question you need to ask yourself. So what is that question right now that you need to ask yourself? The second thing that I'd like you to think about is it aligned? Is it aligned with what you want? For each of those questions that you've asked yourself, evaluate your current life and career and what's aligned. So for example, you might be somebody that says, where do I create value? Or where can I create greater value? And then you spend your day on admin tasks. This is misalignment. So if you're somebody who is wanting to, see, improve humanity, or you're trying to improve a process, or you're trying to change something, but then you're stuck in admin, you're not fulfilling what it is that you desire. So then you've got to stop and say, okay, well then, how do I stop spending so much time on admin? Can I delegate? Can I get an AI agent to help with some of my admin tasks? There's so many options. So you need to figure out in your case. And then you've got these 1 to 2 micro actions, because you can think, but if you don't do, that habit won't be reinforced. Something that I really recommend is that you take on a mentor, and it doesn't have to be a structured mentor. It could be somebody that you're saying, hey, can I just have 30 minutes of your time? I'm struggling in this area. What can I do? We don't do enough of that because we've got to look like we've got all the answers. But we don't need to have all the answers, because there are people out there that, like I said, are where we want to be, who can actually give us a shortcut to that. So where is the success you want aligned? Is taking you to who you want to be. So this is now with clarity. So clarity starts with you. It starts with who you are, what your values, your principles, what do you want, and what truly matters. And remember then, we looked at the 4 forces. How are they shaping you? And asking better questions and with action. So that was basically a very fast look at how to get some clarity in your life. And I hope you've been able to find a couple of things have come through. Now we're going to look at mentorship, which is equally as important and really supports the clarity. So, sorry, I've just pressed something that I shouldn't. Sorry, let me just go back to that. Here we go. I'm back. All right. Now, the power of mentorship. I've had many mentors in my life, and I continue to have mentors, and I find them a powerful tool. They're, um, I remember, sometimes it feels like, who do I ask? How do I ask? I'm somebody who's not afraid to ask. So if you are afraid to ask, I've put together a little guide which I'll send to Jim at probably later today, and then he can send it to all of you. It's like a cheat sheet on how to go out and get a mentor, and also scripts that you can use when you're reaching out to them, which is often really, I find the first step in asking is always the hardest. So I suggest that you get over it and try, because it's not that hard. And even if people don't respond, you go to the next one. So remember what I said about fishing? Fish in a pond that has more fish, less competition. So mentorship's really important, because depending on what skills you're trying to grow, it it can help you really get there faster, and you can also have the support whilst you're doing that. Now, mentorship helped me with things such as I was going to make a very costly investment, and it saved me $1 million. Had my mentor not told me to go down that road. Another mentor helped me save money so that I didn't end up going into a co-founder relationship, which would have also cost me probably a lot of money. So mentors can be a very important door for you in terms of helping you get through these bottlenecks that you have. Now, first thing I'd like you to do here is think about the gaps that you have in your skill set. For example, you may be looking at scaling a business. You want to go from, say, X amount to, double X amount. And you want to speak to somebody who has done that, and you want them to help you. So, for example, you might think, well, I don't know how to scale, so I'd like to speak to somebody who can do that. Another blind spot could be where you don't have the confidence to speak to people. Another blind spot could be that, your ego. Ego is often a blind spot where we're so afraid of people thinking that we're not good at what we do that we mask it. So this is where you can have a safe conversation with somebody, how to layer that, like to peel that back. That imposter syndrome is a real thing, and people struggle with that, and it just makes me sad, because people are here to help each other. You have to find the right person, though, because you can also find people who will use your weakness against you, but that's where you can speak to people you trust to figure out if that person is the right one for you. So you can start with short-term mentorship. And I'm not sure here on this webinar if you've worked with mentors, if you haven't. So I'll be looking forward to hearing your experiences regarding. Now, where do you find them? Finding the right kind of mentor. So I think that the right kind of mentor is somebody that you've got to figure out if they suit your style. So if you're somebody who is outgoing, you may need somebody who's quite, who's also outgoing, but quite can keep you in line. If you're shy, then you need somebody who's quite patient and can bring out in you, that I guess that confidence in you. So you've got to think about the type of mentor that suits you, and not be afraid. They're out there, and they're willing to help. And I know at Macquarie they've got a great mentorship program. So that's something that you can reach out to the team and find out more about. There's so many great resources at the university, and they're willing to help. So don't discount the university as a place to start. Now, where do you find them? So I use LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn is the channel that I use extensively. Again, alumni networks. The university will have access to great resources. There's always events going on. Go to them. You don't know. Like there's so many events that are going on. Sign up to them. And then you'll find that you'll meet people and you never know who would become your mentor. Like I'll give you an example. The other day, I can't tell you who it is because it's a protected, but it's one of like the most sort of richest people in the world. So I was catching a ferry the other day. I was taking a family member sightseeing, and I met somebody who is quite high up in one of this person's organization, and I've since connected with them, and we're on LinkedIn now. So, and I used the example of I'll send you some data, Australian data, because they were visiting Australia and they just happened to be, they just got off the plane and they were wanting to check out Sydney. So what I'm saying is use any opportunity. And I met this person on the ferry wharf, it's just, use the opportunity wherever you are. Um, Approach with clarity, be very clear. So, for example, in the scripts that I'm going to share with you, you'll see a whole lot of scripts about if you know the person, if you don't know the person, because there's different ways. LinkedIn's a great way. If you get access to the email, you can email them straight, but I find LinkedIn is always, you can cold reach out to them and most people will respond. I found that if you do it in the right way. Micro mentoring is a really good way of getting short-term mentorship. It could be a specific problem that you're having. Like I'm dealing with a co-worker who is driving me crazy. So you might have somebody who can help you, deal with that over a period of time that can help you deal with this. And then also this giving feedback. Now, connections and relationships, you have to be able to, again, give back to the person. It can't always just be them giving. So this is something that's really, really important with mentorship. You've got to give mutual value. So if you're working with a mentor over a period of time, offer them like take them out for coffee, especially at the end of your mentorship. Take them out for lunch. They don't expect to be taken to a five-star restaurant. Take them somewhere or buy them a book. Do something, that's meaningful to that person and find out about them. What do they like? Ask them questions. That's really, really important because I can guarantee you your mentorship won't stop there. They will be a resource that you will have quite possibly, if you play it right, for a very long time. It could even turn into a very important relationship, because there's mentorship and then there's advocacy. So once you've got the mentor, you want them actually introducing you. And if you show up and you show that you're working really hard, chances are that they'll know somebody, and most opportunities come because I know a guy or I know a person, it always happens like that. So bring value with you, show that you care about them, even if they are much more wealthier than you or in a bit of a coffee, you can do that for them, it means a lot. Now, overcoming challenges. So sometimes you'll find a mentor who you have to chase them, like you have to chase them. And don't let that put you off. That means that every time you meet with them, you set up the appointment, the next meeting there and there. You never leave without the appointment set up. So, okay, can we meet on such and such? You may have to deal with their PA, but that's okay. And then you may have changes to the calendar. Do not let that deter you. They might miss a month. Don't let that deter you because that 30 minutes or hour that you get from them will be gold. So again, read that book I told you about. So when it comes to external mentors, look in your company, also look in like your family, look around, like look everywhere that's around you, and I'm sure that you will find somebody. And don't limit yourself to one person because you've got a multifaceted life and you've got many aspects of yourself that you can grow. And At work, again, do not be afraid to take on stretch assignments and cross-functional projects if they're offered. They really show that you're being proactive and even suggest these to happen if they're not. Because companies are always struggling with ways to, think outside the box, improve things. And if the team get together, it really makes the leadership team happy to see that. Now, we're almost finished, and I want you to think about what mentorship means to you and how that could possibly benefit you today and where your blind spots are. And do not be afraid to ask for help. With respects to this is really important. I want you to, even if you want to take a photo, this is really important. You have to know yourself and you have to know your enemy. Now, this is from that Art of War book, another book I suggest you read. Because if you do not know yourself or your enemy, it's like it says here, you do not need to fear the approaching battles, which means that when you know the other person you're dealing with, you know yourself, you know what strategies are in place for you so that you know how to deal with them. You don't have the anxiety. We have a mental health issue at the moment, which is quite troubling. And this is something that we can really, really learn from. And if we turn that into a modern day, if I basically rephrased it as you move forward, consider what forces are you underestimating, and how can you prepare to meet them while leveraging your strengths? Because there's always something, we're all got, there's always something going on around us, but we must not be afraid. On the 10th of September, there's part 2 of this workshop. So tell your family, your friends to come along. And here we're going to really unpack what skills and habits you need in this AI age and how to elevate your relationships. If you want to get in contact with me, here's my details. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. I will. I love building connections and helping. And also, I'd like you to also know that if your firm needs help, if your team needs help or your leadership needs help, tell them to call me. I'll be happy to be there. So I can't wait now to speak to you because I can't see you.
Thanks, Diana. That was great. I took away so much that I'm going to use. And we got some questions before today. So I think you've covered how do I find a mentor really well. So thank you for that. One of the other questions was, what do you think is the key to doing a great job in interviews?
Okay, so the first step is, again, going back to what we talked about, is figuring out what you want. Okay. Second step is research and planning. You really have to do wider research on who the company is, who's interviewing you, and then go in prepared with that. And the third thing I would do is I would develop a little, like, when they ask you, tell me about yourself, really practice it. Practice it in front of a mirror, record yourself. People feel uncomfortable doing that, and I don't understand, because I think that then you can see how your facial expressions come across. But when you practice a story around and you make it engaging, people just gravitate towards you. So I would figure out what you want. I'd figure out who the company is and research them, find out what their goals, strategies, if they have a financial report, read it, because you can then ask more thoughtful questions. Then have a very concise list of questions that you want to ask them. So that's the thing I would ask. I would also do role playing with somebody. I would grab somebody that you get on, your friend, whoever, wife, whoever you're closest to, and do some role playing. That's always really, really helpful.
Thank you for that. Um, and that leads on really nicely, I think, into the next question is how do you connect with your team without forcing connection and relatability?
Uh-huh. It's okay. So the first step is to build a relationship. Okay. So if I understand this question, so I'm not forcing, what am I not forcing? Can we sort of expand that one a bit? Because I'm not forcing connection.
Um, I'm just going to answer this based on my experience with our
Yeah.
alumni and what kind of questions that we normally get around this is some people might feel a bit more introverted and not quite sure how to probably even start building those relationships.
Uh-huh. Okay, got you, got you. Yes, yes. Okay, so okay. Okay, so depending on your, I guess your comfort zone, where you're at, like introverted people. Like for example, I would I would never put two introverted people together because they won't talk, you know what I mean? I'd always put an extroverted person with an introverted person because an introverted person does really well one-on-one, right? And the other thing is what I would be doing with to build connections is the relationships because it's all about people feeling safe and being heard. And so with people who have, say, let's use the introversion example, because I think that's extroverted people have no problem in sharing what they think. So I would have, they like using email. They like using, platforms where they can write because it doesn't feel so confronting. So I would have, obviously, you've got different types of, you've got Slack, Asana, whatever people are using. And I'd have a specific, what I call a box, a communication box, where you could have your ideas. Because you also have to remember that an introverted person, they won't speak a lot. So you can't force them to speak a lot, but they're happy to sit and listen, you know? So, it's teaching people to respect each other's differences. So that's what I do with my firm. I hope that answers the question.
I'm not sure if the person is here with us today who asked that question,
Yeah,
but that makes sense to me.
yeah.
And before I ask the final question, if anyone else has any questions, please put them in the Q&A before we finish up. But I really like this last one. If you could tell your younger self two things, what would they be?
Oh, okay. The first thing I would say is really, really choose the company you keep, because that can make and break I guess your life. And I heard this, if you look at, the five people who are around you and not just what they do, but what their characters are like, average that's who you are too. So I would choose better company. And also I would take more risks, not reckless risks, but I would I would have done things like I would have done my doctorate. I wouldn't have allowed the fear to stop me.
And we do have one question from one of the participants today. What advice would you give to migrants who work in the Australian workplace? I personally found building connections with colleagues is difficult due to language and cultural barriers. It's hard to get into the small talks at the end, and at the end, those non-work related moments impact on how they see me professionally and limit the potential for growth.
Hmm. That's a great question because, you know, we do live in a country that, loves diversity. And at the same time, there are, I guess, blocks, and I can empathize with you because my parents came out here as migrants and I'm, first generation here. So, and in my name, for example, you'll see my name, I've got a big name. it has stopped me from getting some opportunities because of perceived biases, but that's never stopped me from trying. So again, the first thing I would do, like to help in your situation, would be to think about where, because if I understand the question properly, is you're trying to make connections with people in the workplace. Is that what you're seeing, Jim? Because I can't see the actual question.
Yeah, found it difficult to build connections
Yeah.
due to language and cultural barriers.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, and maybe this person can, I don't know if they can actually write anything, but could you expand on, do you feel that when you speak that, do you feel a bit shy when you speak? I'd like them to answer that if they can. Do they feel shy when they speak? Because I'll use an example because that will determine which way we go.
So another attendee has just written that they have the opposite issue. Australian working with lots of migrants. I don't feel I belong in my team. My team often speaks other languages other than English, and I can't partake.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, okay. But if we go back to the first one, I want to just say that a lot of the times migrants they feel because they can't speak English well or at the level that they'd like, they edit themselves and they hold themselves back. So my challenge to you is find one person in your team and just ask them that you feel comfortable with, or it might be somebody that you don't know. It might even be somebody outside of your team just to practice with even, and just ask them out for coffee. Just say, I'd love to have a coffee with you, and you can ask them around, I've got something that I wanted to run by you because I really value your ideas. Start with that because when you ask somebody to help in that way, they're more likely to do it. And then when you meet them, you start with one person is what I'm trying to say. Start with one person, build one relationship. Then once you're happy with that relationship, then start with another one. But I had a situation not long ago where I was on a panel, and there was one of the ladies that was speaking on there. She had English was her second language, and she was very conscious of how she spoke. And I pushed her to speak. She was quite nervous. But when she got up, she was brilliant. So it's a lot of these stories, can also be in our heads. So you make the first move, ask someone out for coffee. The other person, I know that sounds very simple, but you'll be surprised if you come to somebody with a can you help me? And then you might genuinely have something, and you can even talk about this topic. You say, I feel a little embarrassed when I speak. What do you think? And see what they say, because once you show a little bit of vulnerability, people just go, oh no, come and join us. So you need to make the first step. You need to make the first step. Um, Second question. Yeah, sorry. Do we?
I'm just very conscious of time
Yeah.
because we have gone over by 5 minutes. And I think what you just mentioned really covers this other issue as well. Making the first step and showing vulnerability is, it applies to both situations
Yeah.
and start with one person. And
Yeah.
that's what when we've done networking events with alumni, that's exactly what we have mentioned to them as well. Start with
Good.
one person.
Mhm.
Um, but I think we should probably finish up there because I know we've gone over time.
Is there a third question?
Sometimes just not knowing how to react when they talk about something.
Oh, that's not hard. If you like what they say, participate. If you don't like what they say, don't participate and just extract yourself. Just be poker faced if you don't like what they say.
Well, thank you so much, Gianna. As I said, it was a great session. I've taken away quite a lot from it. I hope everyone who's joined us today has as well. We'll be sending around the extra worksheets, the recording of this, next week. So you can, and the worksheets for the next session, so you can prepare. And I can also send you Diana's details so you can connect with her. But thank you for attending, and we'd love to hear your feedback on this event so we can build better or uh, iterate and build better events in the future for you. So love to hear your thoughts. But again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Diana, for presenting for us.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.
Cool. Jim, she's great, by the way.
Okay.
Cool. So just give me.
Stop the recording.
Yeah. Don't know how to stop. Yeah, I think you can people out.
Where are you looking? Do you see
I
where
was
it
just
says
trying to end the
more?
session, so
I'm sorry?
sorry.
See where it says more? You should be able to hit the option there to stop. Or if you go up, there should be like a pause button where the recording is. You can pause it. Do you see recording up the top? Up on the
But I don't have that.
Well, you know what? We can
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll end it and I'll do